Finally got an opponent. A lot of guys pulled out, but it is what it is.
Well, there you have it, straight from the horse's mouth. Jarrell Miller saying he will be fighting on January the 18th at Madison Square Garden on the undercard there. Who it is, we just don't know yet, but he has secured an opponent. They've said finally secured an opponent. Several have fallen through. I guess that's no real surprise because this is always shaping as a stay busy sort of fight. I imagine the guys that they're looking to line up would have been trying to get as much as possible, trying to really clip the ticket there because obviously they're going to be lambs to the slaughter here. If it was going to be anyone good, they would have announced it several weeks ago. Miller was in the ring November 17th against Bogdan Dinu. He was in the ring prior to that 5 weeks before against Thomas Adamek. He said he was fighting in January, and if it was going to be anyone good, they would have announced it, late end of November at the latest, simply because who wants to have a couple of weeks, a month, for a training camp if it's going to be a serious fight? So it's not going to be anyone good, but what we will hear, you can almost bank on it, is promoter Eddie Hearn, who is, running these Matchroom USA DAZN cards. He will say something to the effect that Jarrell Miller, one of the busiest and active heavyweights in the heavyweight division, one of the, if not the most active, even though when you actually look at how many fights he's had recently, he's just as active as anyone else, no more active. There are some guys who've had more fights. But the level of competition, and that's the concern we have here with Jarrell Miller, because this guy is a top 10 fighter. But what he's doing is facing, Thomas Adamek, Bogdan Dinu, and now we're going to have an announcement shortly. No one good's going to be announced for this opponent, so it's going to be the third effectively stay busy, nothing sort of fight. How is this guy ever going to get in the conversation for a title shot? Because he believes he is in the conversation. And with this confirmation that he is going to be fighting on January the 18th, it effectively rules out that he'd be fighting Anthony Joshua in April at Wembley, or potentially fighting him in April somewhere else, because Miller has been very clear he won't be shortchanged on a training camp, and if he was to fight Anthony Joshua, he would have to have an adequate camp, proper preparation. He's not going to be jumping into that at a moment's notice. I have my doubts about that. I think he probably would if the money was there, if he's getting paid several $1 million. Certainly that sort of life-changing money, that can be a motivating factor. But I just can't see it. And his promoter, Dimitri Salita, had even said in recent days, there's been talks, discussions, but in this go-round, there really has been nothing concrete, as he put it. So Jarrell Miller fighting January the 18th, presumably another soft opponent, staying busy, and he'll be called the most active heavyweight by promoter Eddie Hearn, who's promoting that card. I just kind of think, what are they actually doing here, besides Miller getting a few easy paydays on a DAZN deal? And that's some of what it looks like, because he is the only big-name heavyweight on the DAZN platform at the moment. And that's got to be a concern for Eddie Hearn, because at the moment, Miller does have a bit of leverage here, because, you've got Nkosi Solomon. He lost his first fight, his debut fight. He's also on that card. But, what are they actually doing here? Because Miller has a lot of leverage in terms of he's the only decent heavyweight they have. He can get he's basically coasted through that first 2-fight deal of his. And you'd have to imagine, this fight here, he's getting a decent amount of money again. It really is kind of, underwhelming stuff, but he's getting decent paydays in the meantime. It's kind of low risk, high reward sort of stuff. So if you're Jarrell Miller, you'd want this to continue, especially if it's giving you several $100,000 per fight. You got to think Jarrell Miller's looking at the situation going, I'm in a great spot here. And we know Jarrell Miller has been fixated on the WBA. He wants the regular title or interim title or a shot at Anthony Joshua. And in the meantime, he's been turning down other opportunities that have been out there. But what is next in 2019 for Jarrell Miller if it's not Anthony Joshua? They really have to assess what they're doing with this guy, because if he continues to take a procession of soft fights, his credibility is just going to be in the drain. Sure, his bank balance might be looking a bit healthier, but how is he ever going to build enough hype and buzz to get to a title fight with anyone decent? They keep talking about Deontay Wilder and there's no impediments to fighting him or Joshua, but he's not signed up to the clean boxing program, can never get a shot at Wilder if he doesn't sign up to that. I just kind of wonder, what is happening here? Sure, there's some promotional issues with his listed promoter, Dimitri Salita. He's also co-promoted by Greg Cohen. And then for these DAZN cards, obviously Eddie Hearn is kind of the guy over the top here of the umbrella. But his main promoters, Dimitri Salita and Greg Cohen, there's been some unhappiness, especially with Dimitri Salita. It's been boiling over publicly late in 2018. Miller, even at a press conference, if you didn't see that one for that Kansas event, sort of chewing him out at the press conference. Really, Dimitri Salita, Jarrell Miller, that's a bad situation. And there's been some speculation and some talk that he's just going to keep riding it out on these soft fights because he doesn't want to get Dimitri Salita paid. But we'll have to see what happens, because eventually, if he doesn't step up, he's just going to fade into obscurity. And in some ways, that's where his credibility is right now. And it's a disappointing situation because this guy can fight. He's proven, he's got some chops against the likes of Marius Wok, Johan Dorper, Gerald Washington. Those were the fights that he had at a certain level, and he needed to push on from there. But what we've seen instead is him go into the gutter, face a rinsed Adamek and an unheralded prospect in Dinu. And now, a week out from the January 18th card, he says he's got an opponent. It's not going to be anyone good, and he will get crucified for it. And I'll probably be part of the chorus saying he needs to do better, and I'm already saying that anyway. But I think Jarrell Miller, he really needs to step it up. And that's, it sort of seems like a bit of a well-worn sort of tune here, but it's true. The guy is not doing what he should be for a guy considered a top 10 heavyweight. Disappointing. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.